It's ubiquitous. It's reeking from the world, all of this tyranny. It's not just in the corridors of power. What a luxury to be saying, oh, only there it is. A great deal of this has to do with this intimate connection. It's one of the awarenesses that come on the road. As you climb higher up the mountain, right, you get a bigger vista and revelations that you couldn't have when you're stuck down in the valley. Well, one of them is actually that age-old known thing to shamanism, known thousands of years ago, that's now been hidden, which is the intimate connections between psychic and physical energy, or the microcosm and the macrocosm. Granted, it has been rediscovered by the quantum scientists. The book Holographic Universe is highly recommended for that purpose, for people who want to look back into the scientific aspects of that. Leonard Slane says that according to the new physics, observer and observed are somehow connected, and the inner domain of subjective thought turns out to be intimately conjoined to the external sphere of objective facts. Well, Richard Milton says that Rupert Sheldrake has sought answers to the unexplained mysteries thrown up by research that are usually ignored by science. When a laboratory rat has learned a new trick in one place, other rats elsewhere seem to be able to learn it more easily. When some birds first learned to open milk bottles on the doorstep, birds all over the country suddenly learned the same trick. Sheldrake's solution to these puzzles, proposed in his 1983 book, A New Science of Life, is that organisms and species can learn, develop, and adapt through a process he calls morphic resonance. It's very akin to the implicate order of David Bohm. In the book The Cosmic Serpent by Jerry Narbury, he says that in the early 1980s, thanks to the development of a sophisticated measurement device, a team of scientists demonstrated that the cells of all living beings emit photons at a rate of up to approximately 100 units per second and per square centimeter of surface area. They also showed that the DNA was the source of the photon emission. Photons is the highest form of light that we presently know. Deepak Chopra addresses the whole concept of photonic action and how that's a bridge between the external and internal world, you see. He said photons come out of nowhere. They cannot be stored. They can barely be pinned down in time. They have no home in space whatsoever. See, so they transcend space. They're exactly the same as the unconscious thought processes of our minds work. That is, light occupies no volume and has no mass. The similarity between a thought and a photon is very deep. Both are born in the region beyond space and time, where nature controls all processes in that void, which is full of creative intelligence. Richard Allen Miller and Iona Miller, in their Nexus article, says there is a harmonic relationship between the Earth and our mind-body. Earth's low-frequency isoelectric field, the magnetic field of the Earth, and the electrostatic field that emerges from our bodies are closely interwoven. Our internal rhythms interact with external rhythms, affecting our balance, our REM patterns, and mental focus. So the science is now coming back to what the mystics have all been saying for years. Now I would ask a question then. Are the mental, emotional, and psychological states of human beings causing the changes in the electromagnetism of the planet? All the dysfunction that we see. And that's drawing very much on the teachings of Wilhelm Reich, who turned all of that upside down and said consciousness is affecting what you imagine as weather patterns, you see, and social changes, and all of that dynamic. And that needs to be taken on board too. As I say, we're not making any point, it's to be studied. Because this could take us into all sorts of areas. Alan Watts says that lack of knowledge about the evolution of the organic from the inorganic, coupled with misleading myths about life coming into this world from somewhere outside, has made it difficult for us to see that the biosphere arises, or goes with, a certain degree of geological and astronomical evolution. As Douglas E. Harding has pointed out, we tend to think of this planet as a life-infested rock, which is as absurd as thinking the body is a cell-infested skeleton. But that's what everybody thinks, isn't it? That's what religion teaches. You just came from out there into this. Not that you grew out of it as a tree grows out of it. That happens to be you out there every time you look at nature. What happens if you thought that? What happens if you realize that's you? That's an extension of your selfhood right there, nature. Nature and you are one. You didn't come out from some mysterious outside of it, into it. You grew from within it, as part of it. It is you, and you are it, in the same way that a single drop of water on a leaf reflects the entire topography all around it. What would that do to our thinking if we really caught it, really got in touch with it? That every brother and sister, every tree that you see, is part of yourself, by the way. Alan Watts addresses this connection between self and nature. Surely all forms of life, he says, including man, must be understood as symptoms of the earth, the solar system, and the galaxy, in which case we cannot escape the conclusion that the galaxy is intelligent. Maybe not the kind of consciousness we have, but it's intelligent nevertheless. Somebody put it there, and it certainly isn't plugged in, although science is desperately seeking to find the plug so we can find out its power, right? He says that the first result of this illusion is that our attitude to the world outside us is largely hostile. We are forever conquering nature, space, mountains, deserts, bacteria, and insects, instead of learning to cooperate with them in a harmonious order. In America, the great symbols of this conquest are the bulldozer and the rocket, the instrument that batters the hills into flat tracks for little boxes made of ticky-tacky, and the great phallic projectile that blasts up into the sky. Well, Mikhail Bakunin, the head of anarchism, put it this way. In his book, God and the State, he says that the liberty of man consists solely in this, that he obeys the laws of nature because he himself recognized them as such, and not because they've been imposed upon him externally by any foreign will whatsoever, human or divine, collective or individual. The champions of selfhood will always put it that way. The great artists know how to tell us subtextually, this story. For instance, this famous image here of Adam, the creation of Adam in the Sistine Chapel. Adam is outside the realm of the God. But more so, the creative God is actually sitting inside a brain. Do you see how the cloak that surrounds God there on the right is actually shaped to look like a cross-section of the human brain? God is within, is what Michelangelo is saying. And in a way, that creative force within us, which gave rise to all of this, Adam, as we know ourselves to be, right? He is in effect cut off from that. He is divorced from that. He's separate. He's on the outside until he awakens to the higher truth, which of course you can better believe that the Pope who funded Michelangelo to paint this had no idea what Michelangelo was subtextually saying and referring to. It's actually the most anti-religious statement you could imagine. God is within your brain, you are God. That's not what they wanted to hear. Tony Bushby says that the Church Fathers knew all about this. According to Bishop Epiphanius, the Christ is the spiritual self within each person. Clement of Alexandria, right? Great church patriarch, he says the greatest of all lessons is to know yourself. For when a man knows himself, he knows God. So at one point, even this self-knowledge was featured in religion in a very strong way. In Hebrews, we read, without father, without mother, without human descent. His life has neither beginning nor end, but as the Son of God, he abides as a holy priest continually. So the one under God is without any of these connections to other human beings. He stands alone. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, many stand outside the door, but it is only the solitaries who will enter into the bridal chamber. Talking about the chemical wedding that comes after the divorce from all the other falsity of the world. In 1 John we read, you have been anointed by the Holy One and have knowledge of all things. The anointing which you received from him abides in you, and you have no need that anyone should teach you, as his chrism teaches you about everything, and is true and is no lie, just as it has taught you, abide in him, the higher self. And once you have that, you need no other authority. As I said, this was in the ancient legends of the earliest peoples on the earth. In the very Song of Odin, it says, I know that I hung on the windy tree for 9 whole nights. Right? 9 is the cycle of initiation, see? Wounded with a spear, dedicated to Odin, myself to myself. Nobody stuck him there. Nobody nailed him on there. To go and seek the mystery of the runes was a willing participation in suffering, a willing entering into a menta, right? Hung upside down. And the windy or the winding tree is the Kabbalistic tree on which the secrets of the runes exist, which is nothing more than the self. But the key there is that this was an oblation not to God or not to some guru, but to oneself, not to a cause, not an ideal. Crazy Horse, the shaman of the Lakota people, says that I salute the light within your eyes where the whole universe dwells. For when you are at the center within yourself, and I within mine, we shall be as one.